Nate Diaz.
I'm good, buddy.
Nate, are we going to see you soon or what? All right. You think we see Nate Diaz in the octagon soon?
No.
As confrontational as UFC President Dana White is known to be, there is one guy that he has tiptoed around publicly for years. Talking, of course, about the UFC enigma, the fighter that never seems to really lose, even when he's losing a lot, Nate Diaz. That's not to say that the two haven't had their fair share of clashes throughout Nate's 14-year career with the UFC. My name is Greg, and welcome back to GK. Today's topic is the sometimes passive-aggressive, sometimes direct but ever-present beef between Nate Diaz and UFC President Dana White. So with that said, kick back, get comfortable, and let's look into it. The story begins in 2007 when Nate Diaz arrives at a house near Las Vegas as a contestant for Season 5 of The Ultimate Fighter. As had been the case with almost all things MMA throughout his life at that point, and will continue to be in the future as well, his motivation for going on the show was his brother Nick Diaz essentially telling him to. His own personal feelings on the matter were less than enthusiastic. And in spite of that, Nate ended up being the breakout star of the season. His take-no attitude both captivated and annoyed viewers. Some looked at him as a badass that would throw down anywhere and with anyone, and others viewed him as a disrespectful poser that needed to be humbled. This divided opinion came courtesy of several situations throughout the show where Nate would find himself in verbal and sometimes physical confrontations. For example, he and at the time ranked UFC fighter Karo Parisyan, who was making a special appearance on the show, almost came to blows after Karo tried to playfully mess with Nate after one of the fights. Ironically, Nate would go on to beat Karo's cousin Manny Gamburian to win the show. On several occasions in the years that followed, Nate recalled that after getting a UFC contract and $16,000 for the fight, he thought that he was rich, telling a story of going to a dealership wanting to buy a Cadillac, and the salesman sticking him with a Honda Civic after finding out his budget. As amusing as that story is, that sort of financial ignorance would end up being the source of years of grief and displeasure with the UFC brass. Nate would go on to win his next 4 UFC fights, earning himself $220,000, with $90,000 coming from submission of the night and fight of the night bonuses. And while showcasing impressive skills in his wins, it was his antics that caught the attention of the fans. Just like his brother Nick, Nate was known to taunt opponents throughout his fights, and some of the taunts were pretty creative. Like this time here when he threw up double middle fingers after locking in a triangle choke on Kurt Pellegrino. At this point, Nate was quite content with his standing within the company, and Dana White was seeing star potential in him as well. After losing several fights at lightweight and welterweight, and then bouncing back with 3 wins against Takanori Gomi, Cowboy Cerrone, and Jim Miller, Nate was finally put into the position of a title contender. He was booked for a fight against then lightweight champion Benson Henderson on December 8th of 2012. It was to be the last fight on his contract, and as customary within the UFC, he renegotiated on a new deal for 8 fights before the event. This is where the tension between him and Dana White began. According to Diaz, he was conned into signing the contract for a lot less money than he felt he was worth under the guise of being able to renegotiate right after the fight with Henderson. He went on to lose the fight in the following one against Josh Thompson, at which point the UFC went back on a supposed promise of renegotiation. Dana was quoted as saying, "We gave him a shot at the title and he lost to Ben Henderson. If he would have won, obviously his deal would have changed if he became champion, which he did not. Then he got stopped by Thompson. Thompson finished him. Now he comes off a win over Gray Maynard and feels like he should be making Justin Bieber money. Nate needs to get back in there and start fighting, win fights again, and earn a title shot again." Nate was subsequently offered a fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov after his teammate Gilbert Melendez turned it down. Nate was willing to take the fight, but under the condition of renegotiating his contract. Instead of obliging his request, Dana went on Twitter and stated that Nate had turned the fight down, with no elaboration or context as to why, essentially painting him as a coward in the eyes of fans, a tactic that would become a staple for Dana in the coming years. Naturally, Nate did not take this well, and a separate feud with Khabib was ignited. This culminated in a confrontation between the two and their camps in 2015 at World Series of Fighting 22, where Khabib's cousin Abubakar Nurmagomedov was fighting Nate's teammate Jake Shields. If you ever heard Nate claiming that he already beat Khabib, or that Khabib took a slap from him and did nothing, this incident is what he's referring to. Nate would progressively become more and more unhappy with his pay, especially compared to his brother Nick, being quoted as saying, "I don't get paid shit, and I'm about to tell the world. I didn't like what my brother and my partners got paid. Now that they got a better contract, which still ain't shit, it blows what I get out of the water. And they deserve triple what they get. I've been in the UFC 8 years and never turned down a fight. It's not like I'm getting paid $20 an hour and they're getting $50 an hour. I'm getting $20 an hour and they're getting $15,000 an hour. At this point, they're having a fat ass party with others getting paid and they're letting me see it. Before, I had no argument because I didn't really know, but now they're letting me see the party and letting me in. So now that I know for sure, I'm gonna talk." Dana replied by claiming that Nate is simply not a needle mover when compared to his brother, and therefore does not deserve to be paid more. Nate's frustration with Dana in the UFC's position was evident when he went on a rant against the company's big announcement of signing former pro wrestler CM Punk during a media scrum before his fight against Rafael dos Anjos at UFC on Fox 13. His stated issue with the signing was that somebody who was a total amateur was getting paid more than almost anyone else on the roster, something that, in his opinion, could never happen in another sport. In classic Nate fashion, he also provided several unintentionally hilarious sound bites, like saying that CM Punk had a puny virgin nose. After going on to miss weight and lose the fight against RDA, Nate sat out for a year. He finally signed off on a fight against Michael Johnson at UFC on Fox 17, and after coming in looking uncharacteristically motivated, won an entertaining back and forth on the feet. Afterwards, he got on the mic and it became very clear what his real motivation for taking it was.
Conor McGregor, you're taking everything I work for, motherfucker. I'm gonna fight your fucking ass.
Nate felt that McGregor took his blueprint of fighting anyone at any time and not taking any shit, and made heaps of money, something that Nate was still struggling to do in late 2015. He wanted to steal McGregor's glory, and he got his chance when Rafael dos Anjos pulled out of a scheduled fight with Conor, and other elite replacement options Frankie Edgar and Jose Aldo were unable to step in on such short notice. Despite being a sizable underdog and taking the fight without a real training camp, Diaz shocked the world and choked Conor out in the second round, shooting him into superstardom in his own right and providing us with a legendary quote.
"I'm not surprised, motherfuckers."
He made an at that point career high of $500,000 for the fight. Instead of praising Nate's performance on such short notice, however, Dana instead went on to big up Conor McGregor for going up in weight, ignoring the fact that Diaz spent most of his career at 155 pounds as well. The UFC wanted to set the rematch almost immediately, which also annoyed Nate, since he personally was never afforded any immediate rematches after a loss. Regardless, the two went on to fight at UFC 202, with Nate losing a close decision but leveraging what he thought was Dana's desperation to get Conor back a win into being paid $2 million. This time, there was no immediate rematch for Nate, and after several planned fights fell through, according to Dana due to Diaz continuously being difficult and turning everything down, he finally stepped back into the octagon at UFC 241 against former lightweight champion Anthony Pettis. After winning the fight, Nate got on the mic and said that he wanted to defend his belt against Jorge Masvidal. Of course, Nate didn't have a belt, but Dana liked the buzz around the fight so much that he created one anyway. The Bad Motherfucker belt, to be presented by none other than Dwayne Johnson. The fight took place on November 2nd of 2019 in Madison Square Garden. It didn't go Nate's way, as the naturally bigger and stronger Masvidal brutalized him into a forced doctor stoppage before the 4th round. Afterwards, Nate once again laid out his grievances of not being afforded an immediate rematch, and the next time we would see him would be during the summer of 2021 when he took on number 3 ranked welterweight contender Leon Edwards. Nate lost every round, but proceeded to almost knock Leon out during the 5th. As has been the case throughout his career, even with a loss, his stock went up. Seriously, nobody understands how to look better losing than his opponent does winning, quite like Nick Diaz. It's actually pretty amazing. And this brings us to today. Nate is currently on the last fight of his contract and wants to fight welterweight contender Vicente Luque. It's been reported that he does not want to re-sign with the UFC and would rather explore his options outside of the promotion. Smart, considering that he's less than 4 years away from his 40th birthday and how much money you could potentially make going into boxing, especially if it's against guys like Jake and Logan Paul. Vicente has the type of style that would make Nate look good even if he loses, and allegedly Dana and the UFC are blocking the fight unless he resigns with the promotion, and the two parties are at a standstill. Dana did offer him a fight against Khamzat Chimaev, a move that was heavily criticized by fans due to Chimaev's wrestling-heavy style, Nate's main weakness. It's been said that the purpose of the fight was to reduce Nate's stock as much as possible so that he isn't as marketable in his future endeavors outside of the UFC. I'd say that while the concerns about a potential fight with Chimaev are valid, if Nate was somehow able to pull off a victory, then that would absolutely skyrocket his earning potential in the future. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see. With that said, I really hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you have some thoughts of your own, don't hesitate to leave them down below. And until next time.